Hello there.
Welcome everyone to episode 41 of the Toy Tune Podcast. Today we're talking about Star Wars, the original release in 1977. Now I know the first question people are asking, where's RK? Well, RK has gotten really busy with work, doesn't have a whole lot of time, so I decided to go ahead and make an episode as a trial to see how I do on my own. And this is a both audio / video podcast. So you can listen to the audio version or you can watch the video version on YouTube. Whatever you like to do. And of course, we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, Star Wars. Love Star Wars. I remember back in 1977 seeing a trailer for Star Wars with my older brother. And we pretty much both looked at each other and we go, yeah, we have to see this movie. I was 10 years old at the time. So I was at that age, it was like perfect for Star Wars. I wish I had been like 6 when it came out because I could have enjoyed the other 2 movies a little bit more. I did enjoy them, but by the time we got to Empire, I was pretty much out of toys. I was into my computer and stuff like that. But we're going to talk about the original Star Wars release, its impact on me, and how much I love the movie. Now, back in May 27th, the movie came out in limited theaters across the country. The closest theater to us was in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was like a 2-hour drive. And it was called the Eastwood Theater. My brother got permission from my parents to pull me out of school that day. And, basically the last week of school for me was that week. So Friday wasn't a big deal. Normally during the last week of school, when I was going to school, we had things called like spirit weeks or whatever. I can't remember exactly what they called them. But you would do like different classes of different things like snorkeling, different things like that. It wasn't actually curriculum stuff. It was basically a filler week. Enough of that. So I got up to go to school that morning. My brother stopped me. He goes, "Oh, wait a minute. We're going to go see Star Wars today. It's playing in Indianapolis." I was ecstatic. I swear I was vibrating so much that I could phase myself through the wall. I was so excited. My brother was doing this as an early birthday present for me. So we piled in the car. We took off for Indianapolis. We were trying to get into the first showing. Unfortunately, the first showing and the second showing was sold out. But we was able to get into the third showing. And I remember getting into the movie theater. The place was packed. There was people everywhere. The lights going dim. And that opening crawl. Well, I had to watch some previews first, but the opening crawl finally comes. Where you see Star Wars. You can see the description of the movie, Episode 4, A New Hope. Kind of remind me a lot of the old Buck Rogers serials I used to watch, along with Star Trek, things like that. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then an opening scene where it goes down, you see that planet, and you see the Tantive 4 come flying into the screen, shooting back towards you, and then the Star Destroyer comes on the screen, and it keeps going. And it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. Could not believe how huge this ship was. Very impressed. Then when it does the zoom out, you can see both ships on the screen at the same time, firing back and forth from each other. I was totally enthralled. That was it. The hooks are in me. Willie's done. I love Star Wars. And as the movie played out, we get to the scene where Ben Kenobi shows Luke his father's lightsaber, and I thought that was the coolest weapon I'd ever seen in a sci-fi movie. And instantly my brain started thinking, wow, the flashlights at home could be lightsabers. Awesome. Which it did become lightsabers. Talk about that later. And of course, I really liked the droids in the movie. That was probably one of the biggest things I liked about the movie, besides the ships themselves. Of course, my favorite ship, the Millennium Falcon. Gotta love the Falcon. It's a great ship design. But I remember seeing the lightsabers, the X-Wings, the TIE Fighters. A lot of cool looking ships in this movie. Highly impressed with it. The cantina scene was really cool with all the different aliens and things like that. I loved the little tune that the band was playing. That I love that song. Every time I hear that song, it just brings a smile to my face because I instantly get thrown back to 1977, being in that movie theater with my older brother, watching this movie. So many great things about this movie to talk about. Like the final battle scene, attack on the Death Star, when all the X-Wings are coming into formation and are rolling over and flying into the trench. Reminded me a lot of like these old war movies and stuff, of the airplanes diving and things. Really great action scene. Thought it was really, really awesome. Of course, I liked all the dialogue that the pilots have with each other. Red 5 standing by, all that good stuff. It was a good action sequence. The Jawas were pretty neat. I liked the Jawas. My mom really liked the Jawas. That was her favorite character in the movie, was those little Jawa guys. What else? Oh, I do remember when they released these as the remastered versions back in 1997. By that time, I was married to my current wife, and we decided to go see the movies again together. And however we waited, when the remastered versions were released, they were released a month apart, starting in January, and following month you have Empire. Then after that you have Return of the Jedi. We waited because we figured the movie theaters would do like a special where they show all three movies as a special screening or something, and exactly what happened. A couple of the movie theaters that we used to go to, one of them had all three movies but in different screens, but the one had all three movies in one screen, and you paid one price, and they would have 20-minute intermissions between the movies to go out and use the bathroom, get some snacks or whatever like that, walk around, and have a triple feature day. And that's what we did. Watched all three movies back to back. It was such a great experience to see those movies again. Now, these were the remastered versions, which had a lot of extra scenes added to them, a lot of CGI effects, like when a Death Star explodes, you see that extra ring coming out. Has some extra scenes along with, showing the Landspeeder going to Mos Eisley. You see little critters on the ground, other robots on the screen that weren't in the original, things like that. I thought it was kind of cool. The remastered versions were really neat, but I always have a fond spot in my heart for the original release Star Wars back in 1977, before all the CGI stuff and all the additions that were made to it. I have the original release on Betamax around here somewhere. I haven't watched it in years because I don't have a Betamax player anymore, but it's my favorite version of the movie. Unfortunately, like on Disney Plus, they have the remastered versions on there. I watched Star Wars last night in preparation of doing this video, and it's the remastered version, which is fine. It's still the same story, just some extra stuff added to it. One thing, it causes a lot of controversy is the Han Solo and the Greedo. I'm in the camp. Greedo didn't shoot first. Han shot first. That's just the way Han is. Didn't really like that addition I made to the special edition, but that's my thoughts on that. The Sand People, they were pretty cool. I thought the Banthas were pretty neat. I guess they were like elephants that had big costumes put on or something like that. The effects in this movie were just outstanding, what George Lucas did. There's actually a really good series I've been watching on Amazon Prime. It's called Icons, and they have a 6-part series called Icons Star Wars, and it goes through the concept of Star Wars with George Lucas all the way up until the beginning of the prequels. It's fascinating to watch. There's a lot of information that I didn't really know about. One of the things I didn't realize was that his wife, while Star Wars being made, Marsha Lucas, I think is what her name was, she did the edits and stuff for the movie. I think she did a great job in editing the movies. They're pretty awesome. But I didn't realize she did that. That was kind of cool to learn that. So it's a very fascinating documentary to watch. Let's see. Before I move on to talking about the toys, what else I want to talk about here about the movie? Not a whole lot. Let's go ahead and go into the toys. Now, when I discuss the toys, I've got them in a numerical order. I'm going to start with my least favorite first and end with my favorite toy last. Some of these I've made videos on already. I'll mention if I made a video. If I have made a video, I'll try to put a link to the video in the video description down below in case you want to go watch that, because I usually expand more on the toy in its own video than I'm going to on here. This is just a general overview of the toys I had growing up related to Star Wars. And it'll be like little summaries I'll talk about until I actually find the toy and make a video on it. I'll get more in depth. Anyway, number 8 on my list was the Kenner Lightsaber. Now, this lightsaber had an inflatable blade. I remember seeing the commercial for this toy. I remember getting the toy. I think it was for my birthday, if I remember right. And I thought it was cool, the design of the lightsaber itself, the graphics on the body of it, things like were pretty cool. Just a real fancy decal on the flashlight. It's basically a black flashlight with an inflatable tube on it. Before this, though, I had one of those force beam lightsabers. It had the hard plastic tube and an orange flashlight on it. Get them in purple, red, green, blue. Had all different colors that you could get. Those little color disc over the lens of the flashlight. My favorite lightsaber to play with, though, was not actually a lightsaber toy. It was an old Hamilton tricolor flashlight, which I've done a video on, called My First Lightsaber. And it was my go-to lightsaber toy. It's actually a pretty neat little flashlight. But anyway, back to the inflatable one. It was okay. What I didn't like about it is you couldn't really do any fast moves. You had to go really slow. Because if you went fast, the blade would fold over on you. It was kind of like a little, I call it the floppy saber. Because it just flopped around when you moved fast. And I did a thing where you blow up balloons, toss them in the air, and hit the balloons, stuff like that, like you do in the commercial. It was an okay toy. I always try to inflate the blade enough to where it wouldn't bend as much. And I overinflated it using my dad's air compressor, and I blew it up. It made this really cool bubble, but pop! So much for that blade. After that, it became a regular flashlight, because I always went to my Hamilton as my go-to lightsaber. Anyway, number 7 on my list is the Han Solo blaster and stormtrooper rifle. These were made by Kenner. No, back then, of course, they were battery operated. I think the blaster, Han Solo blaster, was on C batteries. The stormtrooper rifle ran on D batteries. And they had like the little built-in electric motor with the gear on it. You push the little button on the handle, the motor would start to spin, and then you just tap the trigger, and it make a zit, zit, zit noise like a laser sound. And, I modified my Han Solo blaster to include a nice little red light in the barrel to make it look like it was shooting a laser blast. I'll talk about that more when I make a video on it, because I did find one this week that I picked up. So I'll be making a video on the Han Solo blaster later on, and my memories of it, and some of the modifications I did to it. And I'll talk about probably the stormtrooper rifle as well. Didn't really modify that one, but I'll go ahead and talk about it anyway, share those memories on its own dedicated video. Next up on number 6 on my list is the Star Wars Battle Command game. Now, this was a desktop electronic game, had like little touch controls on it, and you had this grid of LED lights. And what you do as you play the game, you would have a galactic map. You'd go into a zone, and the grid would turn into like a scan of the system, and then you would find which one was the ship, and you would go attack the ship. You take turns. It was kind of like playing, almost like playing Codename Sector a little bit, if you're familiar with that game. It's kind of like that a little bit, not a whole lot. We had to go find the enemy ships and battle them. It's a fun game. Once you learn how to play it, it's actually very enjoyable. The one I have is complete in the box. I did do a video on that one as well, and it's actually a really fun game. You can play a electronic version as well online on your computer. I found a place where you can actually play it, on your computer if you want to go try it out. Number 5 on my list are the Diecast Killer ships, the Millennium Falcon and the Imperial Star Destroyer. I did make a video on these as well. I got my 2 ships for my birthday from my older brother. He came home from work and he says, "I have your birthday present out in my car." It was his Ranchero, a truck car. So I ran out to his truck and I dug around and got behind the seat and found the J.C. Penney bag. That's where most of my Star Wars stuff came from. And inside were these 2 die-cast ships, the Falcon and the Star Destroyer. These are great die-cast ships. The Falcon with the removable guns and the radar dish, the landing gear that opens and closes. The Star Destroyer has the little miniature Tantive 4 inside. Really cool ships. I still have my 2 original ones. And over the years, I've picked up other die-cast ships from that line. The only ones I'm missing right now is the Bespin Cloud Car and the TIE Bomber. I doubt very much I'll ever will get a TIE Bomber. Those are very, very hard to find. And usually when you do, they're quite expensive. So I probably will never have that in my collection. But I do plan on picking up the Cloud Car sometime when I find one for a good price. I think of all the die-cast ships I have in my collection from that era, probably my favorites, besides the Falcon and the Star Destroyer, is probably the Y-Wing with that droppable bomb. And I love the TIE Fighter and the Snowspeeder in that line. Really cool. The TIE Fighter is kind of cool because I watched this documentary where I guess Lucas in Return of the Jedi used a lot of those die-cast TIE Fighters for background shots in the movie. That's awesome. I didn't really realize that at all. Pretty cool. Anyway, number 4. Of course, number 4 is going to be the action figures. And, of course, my original Star Wars carry case. Now, the original carry case I had, it was vinyl. Inside had these 2 gray trays, hard plastic, that you could put your figures in. You had labels that came with it. You could label which figure goes in what tray. You'd flip it over, and it had like a little simulated metal floor with these little pegs that you could stand your figures up on, so they would stand, and you have reenact scenes on top of the storage trays. It's pretty cool, pretty cool little carrying case. Love that thing. I don't have my original anymore. I wish I did, but I don't. Some of my favorite figures, of course, I had Luke, I had Han, I had Chewbacca. I had Ben Kenobi. I had 2 or 3 Jawas. I had at least 20-some stormtroopers over the years. And I had a lot of the droids. I love the droids, especially IG-88. I like that character a lot. R2-D2, of course. R5-D4. A lot of the other robots from the movie. I pretty much collected the robots exclusively. Had a few aliens. I've had had Greedo, of course. And I had Hammerhead because I thought he was a cool looking figure, especially with his side eye as he looks off to the side. I thought that was a funny figure. Now, the first 4 figures I had, of course, was Luke, Leia, R2, and Chewie, because for Christmas in '77, since there was no toys, I got that Battle of the Death Star, whatever, board game, but also got that early bird certificate as well as part of that gift. So I'd get the first 4 figures mailed to me when they came out. And I was ecstatic. I'd never been so excited about a piece of cardboard in my life than opening that up Christmas morning and saying, "Oh, look, early bird certificate. They're going to mail me 4 figures early next year." I was like, "Oh, yeah." I was so excited. I thought it was great. And it had a neat little stand that you could set up, a little display thing. It had like a little membership card, stickers, things like that in there. It was kind of cool. Boy, I wish I had that still. I wish I had a lot of my old Star Wars stuff, to tell you the truth. I do remember one of my favorite figures I got a hold of was my Boba Fett. I did the mail away thing where you have so many proof of purchases, you can mail away for the rocket firing Boba Fett, which I was pretty stoked about. And I remember getting my Boba Fett in the mail. It didn't have the shooting rocket and stuff and all that good thing. I was kind of disappointed, but it was still a Boba Fett, which I thought was a cool character. I remember seeing him on the Star Wars special, holiday special, and I always thought he was a cool character, so I was kind of stoked that they made a figure of him. Now, my Boba Fett, though, I probably ought to save this for a video for Boba Fett. No, I'll go ahead and talk about it. My Boba Fett, though, I was able to get the rocket out of his backpack. It involved boiling the action figure in order to do it, to heat up the glue and stuff, so I can loosen it up and pull out his rocket. Now, back when I was a kid, one of the things we used to like doing in school is we had these ballpoint pens. They had like 4 or 5 different colors. You had like 4 or 5 different levers that you would push to make that color come out the end. Well, we would take the back off, and we would take the springs from the pen ends, and we would stuff them into the end of the pen that you'd push the little thing to make it move, and we would stuff paper in there and jam it down to where it would hold the spring in tension. Then we would move the lever forward, and eventually it would loosen up enough, and the paper wad would shoot out. It was our spitball guns, is what we called them. They worked really well. Well, I did something similar with my Boba Fett. After I got the rocket out, I took apart a pin, got a spring, stuck it inside, and then I pushed the rocket down into his backpack, cut my dad's drill. I drilled a real small hole through the back of his backpack into the rocket and used a paper clip to hold it in place. So the missile was in his backpack. Then when I pulled the paper clip out, the rocket would shoot off. Of course, the spring come flying out as well, but I didn't care. I had a rocket-firing Boba Fett. I should have marketed that. But anyway, if I ever get a hold of a vintage Boba Fett, I'll probably do that again in the video so you can see what I did. It was pretty cool. But anyway, moving on to my number 3 pick, the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter large-scale ships. You can see the bottom of the TIE Fighter right there. I used to do the same thing as a kid with my ships. When I wasn't playing around with them, I'd hang them from my ceiling off a fishing line. Keep them off the tables, things from knocked around. I thought they were cool hanging up from the ceiling, like on display. Love these 2 ships. You know, the X-Wing had the deal where you'd push in on R2's head and the wings would go whoop, lock in attack position. Or you hit the little button in the back and it'd make that zzz, zzz, zzz noise with a little red LED that lit up in the front. And of course, the TIE Fighter made the same kind of noise as well. It had the pop-off solar panels like it got shot, which I think was pretty cool. Really liked those ships. Those were really the only 2 ships I had back in the day. I wanted a Millennium Falcon, but it was pretty expensive. It was pretty large as well. And I never really got a hold of one of those. The one I have now is the Power of the Force 2 version 1, which is fine with me. Would I like to have an original one? Well, yeah, I probably would. I could hang it from my ceiling like I have these other 2 ships. But that's here and there. I did make a video about restoring the X-Wing and also the TIE Fighter. So if you're interested in seeing me take one apart to restore it and everything like that, I'll put a link down in the video description down below. Like I said, these aren't my originals. These are ones I purchased that were not complete or broken that I restored to hang up back there from my ceiling. My number 2 favorite Star Wars toy that I owned as a kid was, of course, the original Landspeeder. Now, I did find one just recently that's in really good shape. The view screen there is pretty, windshield's pretty clear. It's all there. Everything works on it. Loved this toy when I got it for my birthday back in the day. And I got an interesting story to talk about on that one as well, eventually, when I make a video about it. It involves a science fair at the summer school that I was going to. And it was actually a really cool thing I did with it. I'll talk about it more when I make a video on it. The other Landspeeder I had was from JCPenney that I got for Christmas, which was the Sonic Landspeeder. That one had a little R2-D2 clicker. You push the button and make a really loud clicking noise. And there's this microphone in one of the nacelles, the top nacelle of the toy. It would hear that click or like a hard clap or something like that, and would let the motor pivot to turn. So it would like do a circle, hit it again, it'd go forward or backwards, that kind of stuff. It was a very simple toy, and I think my parents were very happy when the toy finally broke, like a couple of months after Christmas. Because I swear every time I hit that clicker, my dad's eye would be like, ooh, ooh, like Inspector Dreyfus from Pink Panther. But it was unfortunate when the toy broke. I took it apart, and I saw how it worked. I saw there was like a little relay in there, and if I manually pushed the relay, the motor would spin around. So I knew that relay would make that motor turn. So I just got a push-button switch and some wire, and I made myself a little remote control with a push-button to play at the toy. And it worked just perfectly fine. Later on, I made it radio-controlled, which was really cool. And then coming up with my number one favorite toy I had growing up as a kid, of course, was the Droid Factory. It came out in 1979. Got it for Christmas in 79. Now, this was right on the edge of me not really being into the toys anymore and getting into cars, things like that. But I wanted this for Christmas, and I did get it. Loved it to death. I think the main reason why I like the toy is because I have a love for robots to begin with. And this gave me the ability to build my own custom robots. Now, I could follow the plans that it came with, the little blue book it came with, blueprint book. But I like to build my own designs. And this allowed me to do that, use my imagination, which is a fun thing to do to begin with. Imagination is a kind of a dangerous thing for me to begin with. Things going on up here, it's not very safe. But anyway, I do have one of those, complete in the box, right back there. I picked it up from House of Heroes Comics out of Myrtle Beach. They got in a huge Star Wars collection. Not too long ago, they had like the radio-controlled Jawa, radio-controlled Sandcrawler, Jawa Sandcrawler. That was in the box. They had a complete in box Star Wars Aerial Aces game. They had the Sonic Landspeeder that was loose. They had this Droid Factory, which was like 95% complete. And a bunch of other stuff. Tons of figures. They still have quite a bit of it down there for sale. A lot of the figures are still for sale. They had the tall blue Snaggletooth as well as part of that collection. But anyway, I picked up that Droid Factory down there. I was able to locate some of the missing parts off of eBay or Facebook Marketplace. I found a couple things off of Etsy. Most of the stuff that was missing was like those little joining, little bolt-looking like things. A few of those were missing. There wasn't a whole lot of that hose left. I didn't want to cut up the original hose to make some of the some of the droids. So I found a substitute silicone hose, same color, but it was very cheap. So I'll use that when I make the video to make the different robot stuff and save the original hose complete and intact and not cut that one up. But like I said, it was a great toy to get a hold of. I would mess around with it to build all the different robots, things like that. I had a lot of fun with that toy. I wish I still had my original one, but this one here is now complete in the box. It's got the manual, it's got the little blueprint book. It's in fairly good shape. So I'm looking forward to making a video on that. Probably do it over the Thanksgiving holiday is when I'll make that video, because I plan on taking some time to make the droids that are in the little blue book, and then try to make some of my own designs, on the video as well. Now I have some follow-up toys, honorable mention toys. Now these are toys I did not own, but I was able to play with because a friend would have it. One of these, of course, was the Death Star PlayStation. They had the little trash compactor, a little Dianaga trash compactor monster in there. Had the little elevator and all that good stuff, a gun on top. That was a fun playset. So typically, he'd have me bring over all my stormtroopers, and at the time I had like 20 or so. I had tons of stormtroopers. for birthdays and for special occasions, or if I got a good report card or something like that, I would usually ask for a stormtrooper because I want to build up a stormtrooper army. I had 2 or 3 Jawas as well. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. It's not a good thing when I start to ramble. I get off on tangents really, really easy. But anyway, a lot of fun playing with that Death Star playset. There's a vintage toy store north of me that has one of the Death Star playsets in the box. I don't know if it's complete or not, but I have been eyeing it. I've been considering maybe picking it up to make a video on, but it's not one of the toys I had growing up, and it's kind of expensive, so I don't know if I want to do that or not right now. Anyway, another one, of course, was the radio-controlled R2-D2. You push a little button and his head would spin, and you could make him drive different directions, things like that. It was a very limited toy. Had a lot of fun playing around with it. We used to drive my buddy's parents nuts with it because it always made this chirping noise as it was moving around. And it would try and drive you crazy after a while. Now, I did do a video on one that I picked up that wasn't working. I'll put a link down in the description below to that video, where I updated one to have 2.4 gigahertz innards in it. I couldn't find a remote control for it, and when I finally did find one, it wouldn't respond to it. I tried messing with it to get it to work, got it to partially work, wasn't happy with it, so I said I'm just going to convert this over to 2.4 gigahertz, and what I'll do is I'll make it so I can control the head independently from the wheels, spin either way. I can activate sound effects, the 2 sound effects independently of each other, and I control each wheel independent of each other. And after doing that, it made the toy really, really cool to play around with. Hey, Kia. I'm being visited by one of the cats. Anyway. Another toy which I thought was cool, I never played it until recently, was the Death Star laser battle game. I did a video on one of those where my wife and I sat down and played the game. First time I ever played it. I do remember seeing the commercial for it. I remember seeing it in the stores. I didn't have any friends that had the game, and I never got one. So it's actually a pretty cool game to play around with. So I think we'll get to the feedback. Let's go to the feedback. Feedback, engage. Okay, the first one here is from my good buddy RK. RK sent in, "Hi Willie, I just saw the random video yesterday, so I hope I'm not too late to send a submission for the Star Wars episode. I had outgrown toys by the time Star Wars came out in '77, but I still wanted more Star Wars at home. Today you can watch Star Wars whenever you want by streaming or DVD, but there was nothing like that in '77. VCRs weren't even around yet. But I did have a Super 8 sound movie projector. I sent away for a 15-minute condensed version of the movie with sound to watch at home. I saw a catalog of films that was selling a shorter version, but with some different scenes, so I bought that one too, and spliced in the additional scenes in the appropriate places. That's freaking awesome. 3 years later, when The Empire Strikes Back came out, I bought the condensed Super 8 version of that one as well. I had the biggest screen I could find to project these on, and I plugged the projector into an amp with a large speaker to make the house shake when I ran the movies. People would come over to watch the movies, and since that's the only way we could watch them in those days, when they weren't in the theater, it was pretty exciting. Sometimes I'd pack everything up and go to parties and other houses, and we'd all sit around watching and cheering to these movies. That is really cool. I like that. I added more movies like Superman, the movie, and Alien, until I bought a VCR in '79 and started collecting videos. Even in those days, there were bootlegs around if the studios hadn't released the movie to VHS yet, which usually took quite a while. It all sounds quaint today, but it was cutting edge back then. Yes, it was. I remember when the VCRs came out, my dad went on a movie collecting binge. And I remember one of the first movies we picked up was Star Wars, the original Star Wars, without all the special effects. I still have it. It's on Betamax. It's in the front room somewhere. Can't watch it, but I got it. And then Jimmy Brazel sent in a submission. Hey there, saw your tweet and had to make sure I did a submission. I loved all my Star Wars toys growing up. I love to convey stories about them. I was 10 when I first saw Star Wars in the theaters. I fell in love with the movie and later the franchise. Later I got my first two Star Wars toys, a Jabba and Sand People action figure. Did not take me long to find out how easy it was to lose the accessories, as a few weeks later I lost the Sand Person's weapon. Yeah, luckily I had all my weapons. I used to keep them in the little carrying case, and a little baggie I had for them, a little dice baggie. It did not take long before I had a slew of figures to play with no ships to play with. I had to make do with what I had. Before Star Wars, I had gotten the Space 99 Eagle 1 spaceship. I had one of those too. Used to fly in the backyard on fishing line. This ship was the perfect size for the Star Wars action figures. I used that as my playset. That's actually a really good idea. As my collection grew, I started getting ships and other items. I had the Katina Adventure set, the X-Wing Fighter, TIE Fighter, the Landspeeder, and the Dewback. Also got the board game Destroy Death Star, and it had the miniature X-Wing playing pieces, which will become more important later. Also finally got a carrying case for my figures after The Empire Strikes Back came out, but it was not big enough to hold all my characters. My dad even made me a lightsaber using a flashlight and the tubes you see inside a golf club bag stuck together. Then finally I got my favorite Star Wars toy. I received the Diecast X-Wing, Star Destroyer, Darth Vader TIE Fighter, and the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon to this day is still my favorite sci-fi spaceship. Mine too. Love that ship. I would play with it all the time and even use the little X-Wings from the game with it, as they seem to be the perfect size, and you can fly the 3 X-Wings because of the playing piece stand they fit into. That's actually a pretty cool idea. That adds a lot of play value to these toys when you can combine other toys and things like that. That's the great thing about imagination. I played with these toys all the time until I got too old to play with toys. I did what probably a lot of kids did, and I let them go to my younger brother. He was 13 years younger than me, so I thought I would let him have as much enjoyment out of them as I had. If I had only even had a small hint at how much they would be worth one day. But that's not the reason for this email. Yeah, we were kids. We just played with the toys. We didn't care about how much they were going to be worth in the future. That wasn't a thing back then. One day, I'm at my parents' house, and they mentioned they were cleaning out the shed. Found a couple of boxes of old stuff in there, and if I would like to go take them home. I said, sure. We go take a look. There were Cub Scout outfits, report cards, old clothes, even my old teddy bear. But also, in one of the boxes were some old toys. In those toys were a few of my Star Wars items. The carrying case was still there. Inside was Princess Leia, the Bespin outfit. The Death Star droid, R2-D2 with a scope for Dagobah. But what made me the happiest was my die-cast Millennium Falcon was still there. The gun on top had been torn off, and it needed a new paint job. But it was there. I was so happy to have it back after all these years. I have since gotten me a better Falcon, but I still have my original on my bookshelves. I have also collected back most of what I had as a kid, and even had to get an original Star Wars carry case from other figures. I have also collected a bunch of the smaller Lego Millennium Falcon sets, and I have collected a few of the new Micro Squadron ships they have now come out with. Star Wars toys will always be in my blood. Yeah, the Micro Squadron stuff they just recently came out with, those are actually kind of cool. I saw the Millennium Falcon on clearance in Walmart the other day, and I came really close to picking it up, but no, I gotta draw a line somewhere. I got too much stuff in this room the way it is. He continues, when I think back on these days, besides the Falcon, what were my favorite toys? I was always a Han Solo fan growing up, but now I find myself loving Darth Vader. He's my first bad guy I grew up with, and of all said is done, he was the more misunderstood character. Between the Falcon and Darth Vader items, I can't seem to get enough. Yeah, I like Darth Vader. Darth Vader's cool. I often wonder why I have such a fascination with Star Wars toys. I think I have it figured out finally in my 50s. It was a transition of a sort. Before Star Wars, I was big into Hot Wheels. But as I grew out of those, Star Wars came into my life right before I discovered video games. I could spend hours by myself, since I was the only child till I was 13, in my living room in another world of my making with my Star Wars toys. and live adventures that could never have in real life. The imagination of a young child with the right toys could take me places I had never been before. Those memories from over 40 years ago still have a place in my life, and will not trade them for anything. Yeah, I did the same thing. I have a very, very, very good imagination. And I did the same thing back then. Create all these little adventures for the action figures, just having a good time with them. Before video games, all these other distractions you have now, you had to depend on your imagination to play and things. And I think a lot is lost now with the distraction of social media and video games and all this other stuff. I don't think imagination really is out there that much anymore, to tell you the truth. Anyway, he continues even more. One last thing before I close out this mini novel. I shared this one memory on the Ferg's 2600 Game by Game podcast on one of his many Christmas specials. I received on one Christmas one of the Family Feud games. I was a big fan of the show back then with Richard Dawson. Yeah, I like Richard Dawson. I talked my parents into playing a game, but found one problem. I could never figure out who won the starting question. I got the idea and went to my room. I came out with my X-Wing and my TIE Fighter and handed them to my parents. Here we are, Christmas morning, playing Family Feud using the Star Wars vehicle's laser buttons for the buzzer. Never tell me that kids cannot figure out things with their imagination. That's a good use of those Star Wars ships. That's actually kind of cool. I'll end this here as I can go on all day about different things and stories I deal with my Star Wars toys. I look forward to hearing the show and some other memories others have for their toys. Star Wars always be with me, and I feel like a kid sometimes when I think about the memories I had with them. Yeah, Star Wars holds a lot of fond memories for me as well. Well, here's a postscript from him. Hey Willie, this is a P.S. to my submission. I have dyslexia. Words don't appear right to me sometimes. I saw a comment on your update video about the Star Wars trading cards. Oh, I forgot about those. I love collecting those for the first movie. The anticipation of buying a few packs at the store and seeing if I was able to get any more cards that were not duplicate was always fun. Plus, being able to relive the movie by seeing the scenes was always fun as well. Got a little crazy when the new color sets came out. I have the whole set now. I was looking for them just the other day. That's cool. I had a few of the Star Wars trading cards as well. I do remember those. Didn't have them on my list, but I did have some of those back then. They were kind of cool. I kept mine in a folder, a picture folder that had like these little pockets that I would put them in. I wish I still had them. I don't. This next one's from Jason Shananaman. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, guy. Thanks, Willie, for the chance to share my memories of Star Wars toys. For me, it was all about the figures all throughout the 3 films. I wanted the ships really badly, especially at Landspeeder, but never got it. But I had a lot of the figures at one time. When I first saw Star Wars, my favorite part was the Katina scene, and the aliens really did it for me. I had to have them, or as many as I could get. There was just something about the whole scene that's always stuck with me. Greedo, Walrus Man, Panda Baba, and Hammerhead were my favorite toys for a long time. I also really loved the droids. After that, it was all about Yoda, Darth Vader, and Luke. Yoda is right up there with the original Katina aliens. Such a great design and backstory. So many memories, and still to this day, I love all the original figures from the 70s and 80s the most. One last thing. I was at a department store with my grandfather sometime after Jedi was out for a while, and we saw what must have been hundreds of figures, all discounted to 49 cents each. Only got some of my favorites I wanted, but wow, if I had inside money to buy them all, that would be crazy what they'd be worth today. I do remember seeing the figures on discount back then. Of course, when Jedi came out, I was fully into my automobiles and cruising the strip for chicks and all that. Basically American Graffiti, but in the 80s. It's what I was doing. American Graffiti is a great movie, too. Next up, we have Tim Duarte. He writes, Hi, Willie. For the upcoming Star Wars episode of The Toy Tomb, Here is my submission. When it can talk today. I saw the original Star Wars in theaters in 1977. I was 10. Born in 1967, and I was hooked. I was 2. I saw it a second time in the summer at a drive-in theater that is now no longer there. Yeah, I remember seeing Star Wars at a drive-in theater. That was cool. Don't remember where I was there with. I think I was there with my brother's girlfriend and him, and I went and sat on a blanket up towards the screen. He didn't want me in the car for some reason. Anyway, for Christmas of 1977, the toys were not made in time by Kenner. However, for that Christmas of 78, I got all 12 of the first action figures. The Landspeeder, the X-Wing, the TIE Fighter, and the Death Star Space Station. What a great haul! I'll never forget those toys. Dude, that is a great haul. I no longer have them. I did repurchase loose figures many years ago, and I still have those. I'd love to get the other items I once owned again, but I just have a bad feeling it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. Yeah, vintage Star Wars stuff has gotten very expensive. I've noticed that myself. I went to price some vintage figures to put with my Landspeeder when I make a video about it, and it's like, ooh, there wasn't that much for a Luke. Ooh, I don't know if I want to do that or not. I think I'll just leave the figures out of the video. But anyway, that's all the submissions I got for this. Now, before I close the video out, I'm thinking about making another episode and talk about The Empire Strikes Back. And that way I'll have like a trilogy of episodes for Star Wars. So this episode here, 41, was the original Star Wars. Maybe 42, if it falls into that number, will be Empire Strikes Back, and then the one of that will be Jedi. Now remember, I didn't really have a lot of toys. I didn't think I had any toys from Empire Strikes Back, and especially none from Jedi, because at that time I was aging out of that. So what I may do is ask for submissions, either audio or video, for like The Empire Strikes Back, its toys, if you had any of those, and memories of them. Same thing with Return of the Jedi. And what I might do is I may go in and research, maybe I'll pick like 5 toys I think are the coolest from that movie that was made and talk about them. That might be what I'll do for that episode. Keep looking at the Toy Tune Podcast Facebook page, or follow me on X, Toy Tune Podcast, if you want to see what's coming up and everything. If you have memories you'd like to share right now that I can archive until I do the video, you can send them to arcadeusa76@gmail.com. If you do send submissions, I'll just archive them and save them for when I actually do the video. I'll try to make an announcement like maybe a couple months ahead of time that I'm getting ready to do the recording of the video, just to alert everybody that it's coming up. Anyway. So that's Star Wars, my memories of the movie when it came out, some of the memories of my toys I had from the movie. Had I been 6 when Star Wars came out, I probably would have had a lot of the toys from the Empire Strikes Back line, and maybe from Return of the Jedi as well. But when Star Wars came out, I was at that age, and it was a perfect age for Star Wars, but for the sequel and Jedi, I aged out. So unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of experience with those toys or anything like that. I do have a B-Wing fighter here from Return of the Jedi, a vintage one that I'll be making a video on sometime in the future. I do have one of those sitting here. I didn't own one back then, but I do have one. I plan on hanging it from the ceiling with my Y-Wing that I have back there as well. But I did a video on that, as I did too on a restoration video. It's not an original Y-Wing per se. It's probably like 80% original. It's got reworked electronics inside. It runs off a 9-volt battery now. It's got a different power switch. The rear end of the nacelles are 3D printed, and the struts going to the nacelles are 3D printed. But other than that, the rest of it's all original. And I rambled again. Anyway, that was Star Wars, episode 41 of the Toy Tune Podcast. As always, everyone, I appreciate everybody stopping by to listen to the podcast or watch this video, either one. But as always, everyone, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.
If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
20th Century Fox presents the most extraordinary motion picture of all time, Star Wars.
Here's where the fun begins.
No legendary adventure of the past could be as exciting as this romance of the future.
Here they come.
May the Force be with you in Star Wars.